I have made a few videos before and have recorded myself speaking for them. I don't like my voice and my sound quality is very bad, so I am going to try out being a robot for a while. It's not too bad. I just have to make sure I stay well oiled. I have made good friends with Marvin and he is not as miserable as he makes out to be on Hitchhikers. Since I am now a robot, I am also bound by Asimov's laws of robotics, so you can feel ultra safe around me now. Anyway, let's get talking about something creepy. When I was in trauma surgery in upstate PA, I got a notification about a man who was shot 3 times in the head. He comes in, literally one eye hanging out of the socket, blood everywhere, and he's slumped forward. Apparently he was shot in the temple, exited out his right eye socket, in the nose exited from the roof of the mouth, and in the cheek one with exit from the side of the head. At this point I'm thinking they just brought him in so we can pronounce him in the ER because he looked dead. I go to examine him and tilt his head back, and he says, "You be gentle." I jump back and scream like a little boy, as did everyone in the room. Literally the bullets missed his brain in every single shot. Internal decapitation. Only saw it once. Guy walked into the ER after a car wreck saying, "I'm a little banged up. My neck kinda hurts. I thought I'd better get checked out." We're all laughing and joking with him. I stick a C-collar on per protocol, and we take him to get a CT scan. No biggie. I'm thinking he'll be walking out in a couple hours with a script for Norco and a couple days off work. Then the scan comes back. The attending MD ran into the room and starts barking orders. Call neuro. Call trauma surgery. Call spine. Don't let this guy move another fucking inch. Needless to say, the patient was fairly alarmed. This story happened somewhere around the 70s to my uncle and even made it to the newspaper. My uncle was driving on a scooter one afternoon on a country road when he was hit heavily by a car from the back. He fell off the scooter, flew through the windshield of the car, and came to a halt on the back seat. The driver of the car stood on the brake so that he flew from the back seat again through the windshield and ended lying on the road. Except from some bruises he was unharmed. When the police came, both my uncle and the driver of the car told the same story, which they didn't believe in the first place. However, my uncle had lost a shoe in the back of the car, so finally also the police got convinced. My grandma cut out the article from the newspaper and it is still in a frame in her living room. 20-something-year-old male, motorcycle versus SUV, the SUV won. We arrived on scene to a man face down in a pool of blood, 1 liter. We were told he was wearing a helmet, but it was nowhere to be found. He was about 30 feet from his bike and there was a clear trail of blood to the bike because he wasn't wearing leathers. We rolled him onto the board and that was the first beating heart I ever saw. His road rash was so bad it eroded his chest wall and we were staring at his heart, a collapsed lung, his great vessels, and the branches of the brachial plexus. Amazingly, they were all intact. Of course he had multiple injuries to his other extremities, mandible, zygomatic arches, etc., but we frankly didn't care at the time. We were on scene for no more than 2 minutes before we sped off to the trauma center. I remember transferring the patient to the chief of trauma surgery, whose first words when the trauma pad was removed were, "Holy shit. I thought for sure he died." Fast forward 2 years when I was at my primary care physician's office for a checkup after my medical school interview and saw a collection bin for a veteran's wedding. Guess who? Yup, it was him. They had taken his left arm to reconstruct his chest since the nerves were shot and he recovered. A 92-year-old lady with urosepsis, bacterial infection in her blood from a urinary tract infection. Her initial gas had a pH of around 6.7, and a lactate of 12, for the non-medical peeps, that is too acidic and too high. Young patients would have a hard time surviving that, let alone the very elderly. She was unconscious, but had received 1 dose of Cipro, an antibiotic, by mouth from her family doctor before becoming altered. Her family agreed to a comfort, do not resuscitate, level of care and said their goodbyes. The next morning, the resident on call got pages asking if she could eat. She was awake and hungry. Guess the dose of Cipro kicked in.